Hey, brand builders, ready to take your brand to the next level? I'm Dana Ammons, and welcome to the Brand Blueprint. Welcome to a special edition of the CIC Founders Spotlight with the Brand Blueprint. I'm Dana Ammons, founder of Value Growth Partners, and I am excited to bring you a series of conversations with some of the leading voices shaping entrepreneurship and innovation across the country. Now, today we're focusing on CIC, which is short for Cambridge Innovation Center, which has been at the forefront of startup acceleration, workspace innovation, and inclusive entrepreneurial support for over 2 decades. Now, CIC is headquartered in Boston and has grown into a global network with campuses around the world, serving thousands of founders, startups, and ecosystem partners. Now, I am so excited because today joining me are two of the key figures behind CIC's founder-facing work out of its flagship Boston location, and that is Kat Lazell and Sam Garcia. Now, Kat and Sam are both deeply embedded in the startup ecosystem. They curate programs and partnerships that provide real-world value and equitable access for founders of all backgrounds. Kat and Sam, thank you so much for being here this morning, and I am glad to have you on the show. Welcome to the Brand Blueprint.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thank you for joining. So let's get started. I think, what I wanted to start with is a little bit about both of your individual origin stories before we jump into detail about the CIC. So let's start a little bit about that. Can you share a bit about your entrepreneurship journey within this realm of entrepreneurial support and what led you to your roles at the CIC?
Sure. So I'm the senior program manager for CIC. I've been at CIC for 8 years, so I've had a couple of different roles during my time here. But I think the through line of kind of what led me here and the roles that I've held both before CIC and at CIC are that I want to be the person who helps people interact with content or connect with organizations or with people that they either didn't think they had interest in before or didn't have access to before. So that's been kind of the driving force behind all of the roles that I've held previously. I have a long history in hospitality and, working in restaurants and things like that. And then when I moved to Boston in 2017, I was looking for something where I could kind of live my passion, live the things that I really enjoy doing, and had a friend who worked in a sort of sister organization who suggested that I check out CIC. Did not have a background in startups or entrepreneurship at all, really. Wow. So it was definitely a learning curve. But yeah. I mean, I think something that I've really enjoyed in my time here is that you can learn a little bit about a lot of different things. And so I think it was just kind of like by osmosis, I really became entrenched in this world. So was on the events team in a couple of different roles for a number of years, and then have moved more into this role where I'm helping to craft some of our own programming and taking the things that I learned from being on the events team and seeing other people put on programming to support a more inclusive ecosystem within CIC.
Wow. I mean, and so you came literally from no formal entrepreneurial background and have really blossomed in this system. So tell me a little bit more. I want to just stay with you for a second, just in the reality of, as you said, your experience on the events side, and then bringing that experience and your hospitality background to the forefront in your current role. How has your previous experience really informed what you do now in the CIC and how you work with founders?
So that's a great question. I think right before I came to CIC, I was getting my master's in public history, which is like how people interact with history outside of a classroom environment. And it's a lot of people, like, history was not my favorite subject in school. But being somewhere like Boston, you're kind of constantly running into these like monuments and historic buildings and things like that. And that is kind of that's kind of what appealed to me. So actually the first event that I worked on at CIC was the Boston VR meetup. And that felt like such a good, I guess, parallel to the work that I was doing during my master's, because VR is it was like, a lot of people who are really, really passionate and excited about the innovation in VR. And VR is something that like you can be really, really deep and knowledgeable of that in that world, or you can just kind of be an enthusiast, or you can just be kind of VR curious. And their meetup sort of appealed to all ranges of experience and interest levels. And it was not, I mean, there definitely were nights that were like, let's see what this video game can do. But there were also nights of like, how are surgeons using this for training? And how is like FedEx using this? And so that was kind of like, I think if that was sort of a hook in for me. So even though I was already like working at CIC, I was like, okay, this is making sense to me in terms of like the experience and the interest that I came into CIC with in a different subject, but I can see where the parallels are drawn into this. Yeah.
No, I love that. I love that. Now, Sam, how did you find your way into the space?
Oh, that's such a good story. So yeah, my name is Sam Garcia. I'm the program coordinator for the Social Impact Program. And I'm originally from New York, actually. So I moved to Boston about 5 years ago. I grew up in the South Bronx. And from the time I was able to work, I started working. So I was working in nonprofits and worked my way up to like program management and development in that space. And I was doing that for about 10 years. So I did that in New York City. I transitioned that over when I moved to Boston and kind of got really immersed in the nonprofit ecosystem and also the philanthropic ecosystem out here. And as I was working out here, I also started working with artists as well too. And a lot of the things that you do with artists are the same things that you do with startups because artists are entrepreneurs. So I curated a lot of events with nonprofits and started doing that on the side as well too. Right before I came to CIC, and a lot of it was like, I need help like writing this grant. I need help like establishing like the legal entity of like what I'm doing. I'm an artist. I don't know how to market myself. And then coincidentally enough, I kind of found CIC like very randomly. I just like kind of stumbled upon it and I was like, I don't know anything about startups, but I'm gonna just apply. And a lot of it like it seemed very fine-tuned to a lot of the skills that I had already grown, like in a lot of the ecosystems that I was already a part of. And it was really cool kind of seeing all of the worlds that I had already worked in kind of marry one another. Like now I'm in a space where it's like, even though you work in nonprofits, a lot of the things that I was talking about in nonprofit funding, I now speak about a lot or like facilitate those conversations with the startups that I work with. So I got here about a year ago, like a year and a half, a year ago. It feels like a longer time just because there's so much going on. But it was a very big kind of culture shock because it was an industry that I've never kind of tapped into. But I think that a lot of the times we preface those like industries that we've never been into and don't realize that a lot of the skills are transferable to like the other industries that we've been in. And Boston is super small, Cambridge is small. So I started to see a lot of the same faces that I had seen before. And I'm like, what are you doing here? They're like, oh yeah, I also do this thing with startups. And I'm like, with startups, like all this pre-seed, seed A, series. I was just like, I'm so lost. Like, I don't understand. But I started learning a lot, like as I was working with the entrepreneurs that we work with. And I think that that's the beautiful thing. Like I do well when I'm learning and executing at the same time. And it was like a thing of like, I came on, we started programming and I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna start listening into the programming too, because I need to know this stuff in order to be able to best connect folks to these different resources. So yeah, that's kind of like how I got here. I don't want to talk too much about it because I feel like we're going to flow into it. But yeah, it was I don't think that it was a coincidence at all. I think I was like very much meant to be in this space.
Clearly so. I mean, being a girl from the Bronx going to Boston and finding her love in Boston, I would probably suggest that when you go back home to the Bronx, there are people who are probably like ready to tie you up and make you stay, like to keep you from going back to Boston. And only a New Yorker can say, I heard you say something that I was like, you know what? I've lived in both cities and I know people watching the interview or listening will go, I think she just called Boston a really small town. And I'm like, only a New Yorker, right, can say, hey, Boston's a really small town, really small community. So
only us. But yeah.
only New Yorkers can say that. So that was a classic indicator. But I love that journey because and the reason I wanted to start there is because many times we talk about the organization and the impact that the organization is having, but we don't really recognize that the organization is driven by the people. that work for the organization and bring all of these diverse backgrounds and experiences, and no better than in an accelerator environment where you're supporting founders who do need that versatility, right? Similar in my consultancy, I love that aspect of what I do. I have to put on different hats. And some people say every day. I do it almost every other hour, right? Like you're jumping in a conference call to Kat's point about VR. You come out of VR, you're talking about medical grade wigs. You come out of that, you're talking about clothing that can help people who are, no hearing or hard of hearing, hear music, like all of these like really fascinating concepts. And you have to kind of catch up quickly to understand the technology, understand the founder's objective in order to best support them. So I really appreciate you both giving me your origin story. So let's talk about the organization a little bit now. And for those of you who are unfamiliar, the CIC has really played a pioneering role in the innovation economy. So, can you talk to us about and break down the CIC's mission and how it uniquely serves the founder community?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think that, as you mentioned, like sort of the baseline is we provide flexible private office space and co-working space and labs in some of our centers to innovators and entrepreneurs. That's like the basic of what we do. I think what really makes CIC unique is the whole ecosystem that is created. So when you're walking around the halls, you're interacting with people who might have a startup. Maybe you're interacting with someone who works for like a huge company that just has their local footprint here. You're working with educators, with consultants, with international companies expanding. So like there is really like a huge variety in terms of industry and in terms of the types of companies that are within CIC. And then I think there's also a lot of openness and willingness for people to interact with each other and lend a hand. And part of that is just sort of the culture that's been cultivated at CIC. And part of it is like through intentional sort of structuring of the space. So a really like small example is that we have kitchens on every floor, which, in a startup environment is like very, very key. But we have specialty snacks on the floors too. So it encourages people to kind of get out of their normal workspace because the chocolate covered pretzels are on 4, but like I'm working out of 11. And so I need to go take a little field trip and who knows who I'm going to meet when I'm
going
down there.
before.
Yeah, exactly. So like, I think that like within the spaces itself, there's the sort of this ecosystem that's created with people moving around and being willing to chat with each other. And then I think we also have we have really rich programming, both created by our clients, created by CIC, and then also our sister organization, Venture Cafe. So we bring together sort of a lot of different businesses and universities and government entities to try to make things happen and be a spark for innovation. And I would say like, what we do here is really unique, and it's not just it's strong in our local centers, but like I said, we're also a global community. So, your CIC card, if you're a member, will work in our Tokyo site. It'll work in St. Louis, and so it really encourages people to kind of view this as almost a passport and think about not just who they're connected to within our centers, but across the world.
And can you share a little bit more about the locations and kind of how much of a global network you guys are? Because I think, right, you hear a lot of organizations say, hey, we're global, right? But when I really checked you guys out, and this was, early on, I was doing my research as I worked with a couple of founders from the CIC, and I was blown away at the reach of this organization. So talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I think when we're going into cities, we're doing so really intentionally and building out relationships with governments and universities. So I think that helps. But yeah, we're in the US. We have, let's see if I can do this from memory. We have Philadelphia, St. Louis, Providence. In Europe, we have Berlin, Rotterdam, Warsaw. In Asia, we have Tokyo. We just opened up, or we're about to open Fukuoka, and we have some other sites under development as well. So yeah, I've been as far.
Okay, so Kat just won the CIC location lottery. Just for you guys know, internally, anybody at the CIC, make sure you shoot Kat a quick note and say, "Yo, you did that thing," because you're just running through those locations and you're expanding, and also you dropped the pronunciations correctly, which I think is a bonus. I probably would have remembered some of the locations, but I probably wouldn't have been able to pronunciate them correctly. So bonus points for that. Now, talk to me a little bit about the Boston campus. And I want to hear from you and Sam on, Boston is a city I lived in early in my career. It's a city that I think a lot of people need to visit to really understand, because to your point, there's so much history to the city. It's a super diverse city. There is a phenomenal, as many people know, educational base there in the Boston market, but tech is also a really strong industry in the Boston market, which I think some people forget. It was almost like tech started in Boston. It was kind of really the OGs. It went out west when Microsoft and some of the originators took it out west, and it kind of took the reputation with it. But how does the CIC Boston campus tap into that unique energy and that unique kind of characteristic of what makes Boston Boston?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sam.
I think what's really cool, especially somebody who hasn't been here for long, kind of operating in the startup ecosystem, about what's cool here is everything is kind of at your disposal. So we're based in HQ, which is in Cambridge, which is not too far from Boston. It's like right across the Charles River. And what's really cool is like, aside from the institutions that are here, like MIT, Harvard, you have other schools across the river, Suffolk, BU, Northeastern. You also have just other folks that are doing like similar things. Like we have other lab spaces. There are other folks that are running accelerators and like different resources for startups. We have like folks like Prepare for VC. We have Startup Boston, which kind of hosts like all around the Boston and greater Boston area. We have Techstars that kind of works out of here. Yep. But those are just names, right? But I think they serve a bigger function in the sense of like, if one thing's not a fit, you have so many other folks that can be a fit to you. And I think what's cool about CIC is that you see a lot of those familiar faces come through here for events to host things. So it's like you start meeting the same types of people and it's like, okay, like now I've met like 5 different people that run these accelerators. Like now I kind of have an idea of like where I want to go. Like maybe C10 Labs doesn't work for me, but Mass Challenge probably works for me, right? And I think what's really fluid about that is like, I think in some places, and even in Boston, like sometimes resources can feel very siloed, but I think what's cool about CIC and what we've been doing is like really trying to marry everything together so that folks feel like there's pipelines for these things, right? Like maybe it's not concrete, but it's like somebody can go to Kat and be like, hey, like I need a connection to C10 Labs. Do you know who runs that? And she's like, I actually do. And then like vice versa, somebody can come to me and be like, hey, like I don't operate out of Cambridge. I need somebody that can work out of Boston and like assist me in that. And I'm like, I got just the person for you. So I think like that is super essential to your journey as a startup founder because it's hard trying to look for everything when you don't even know like where to start. Right. And I think like what's really cool about being here is like Kat said, like those programs that they host, they're super intentional. And like, we're not bringing you together just for breakfast. Like the breakfast is good, but also like come and meet this investor that's in this space that works out of here that you probably would have never met if you were just walking and passing in the city, right? So yeah, I think like it's such a unique and like curated way to really make these connections organic as possible and also sustain them for a long time as well too.
I love that, Sam. I mean, the reality of what you just spelled out about Boston is sometimes, to your point, whether it's Boston or many other cities, things feeling siloed, right? You can be in what people call, oh, we got a great entrepreneurial environment. We have a great, ecosystem. But if the ecosystem is not talking to each other, right, not working with each other, not referring people to each other, then it's not really an ecosystem. And I can tell you, in my experience as a consultant and as a startup mentor and coach, working with different programs across the country, I have found that to be so true about CIC and so unique in that, especially in the Boston market, you guys really are not just call it living the part of the ecosystem, you're helping facilitate the ecosystem that makes this, this is such a wonderful support system for founders. And, the one thing I want founders that are listening to this program to understand, and I stress this a lot, especially when I meet with clients, what the CIC is providing in many cases as a member of the program for free, we as consultants and startup coaches and mentors charge for. So those resource networking opportunities to be referred to different organizations and founders and funders that can potentially help you through the CIC, that and those types of services are services that once you come out of those environments, you're likely going to have to engage with consultants like myself and pay for those opportunities. And that given is still a worthy service to be provided, but that's why programs like the CIC and people like Sam and Kat are so important to founders, especially in their early stage growth. So let's talk a little bit about, so the founders and the types of founders that you guys work with, because that's one of the reasons that I am really attracted to and excited about the work that I'm doing with the CIC. But I want the the audience to kind of understand a bit more about how you guys approach your founder kind of mission and what that looks like.
Yeah. So CIC as an organization is open to anyone. Specifically, Sam and I run the social impact program out of CIC, which is meant to support underrepresented founders. And right now, how we're defining that is BIPOC, female, and veteran-led businesses based out of Massachusetts.
You know what? Let's stay right there because I think the follow up for me would be given the kind of political climate that we're in right now, and I don't want to take this, platform and for us to have to kind of go out and fight the fight, but I do want to commend the CIC for doing something that I think has come under a bit of political attack and under fire, and frankly, in many ways, misunderstood in terms of the purpose, the goal, and ultimately the benefit of organizations like CIC. Talk a little bit about like leaning into equity and inclusive support and what that looks like so that people, even on the other side of the aisle who may not think that that's necessarily the right level of support, at least understand it and understand what that really means in terms of being inclusive and leaning into equity, when it comes to supporting founders of various backgrounds.
Yeah. So I think we might want to start this answer.
Yep.
I think something that's really important to CIC is to help create an inclusive ecosystem. So we've been running social impact programs out of several of our centers for say close to 10 years now.
Right.
And it's looked a little bit different in every center. It's been a lot of passion projects, but I think really what we want to do is make sure that our ecosystems, that entrepreneurship, that innovation is something that does include a lot of different voices. I don't think that you do get an innovative atmosphere just hearing the same sorts of people, the same sorts of backgrounds over and over again. And really what makes CIC such a rich environment is that we're international, that it brings together a lot of different types of people with different backgrounds, and people are organically meeting each other and ideas are sparking there.
What does it look like from a programming standpoint in terms of what specific programs, mentorship models that you guys are using that differ from others? And I preface this by saying I am not going to name the organization, but I recently did a mentor, what they called Swarm, with a local organization here in Charlotte. And the intention of the event was, I think, in the right place. But the event essentially consisted of 6 to 7 mentors meeting with 4 to 5 founders for 15 minutes each, and almost like a speed dating approach. And so you only have 15 minutes to sit with the founder, talk to them, give them some sort of feedback, and then move to the next founder. And that literally was the program for this. Now they're going to do, I think they said 5 swarms, right? But you hear where I'm going with this. So I want you to talk a little bit about what support really looks like in the CIC, how you guys kind of wrap around service approach your founders in a way that I personally think is just really, really effective.
I can speak to this a little bit. So we built the curriculum out. First time around, we were just like, yo, let's just get at it. And I think, we've learned a lot since our first programming year, and we built the curriculum really to encompass like equity is not just about like, okay, I'm providing you this opportunity. It's also about educating you about the value of the opportunity, and allowing you to exercise your autonomy as an entrepreneur as well. Because I think a lot of times entrepreneurs sit in a seat where everything is a risk. And this program, I think we both built it in mind of like, let's just take all the risk on your behalf. And I think that's one of the most important things to encompass into programs like these, because a lot of the times it's like, okay, here's this like session on VCs, like go find a VC to connect with. But it's like, we build that in. We have like a lot of support around like fundraising, a lot of support around marketing and branding, like general kind of like startup knowledge, but also providing you the resources on top of that too. So it's like we have this programming session, right, that we'll offer you on a Tuesday at 12 p.m. Bring your lunch. You can come eat that while you're listening into the session, but also we'll line you up to be able to sit with this like expert and you can have office hours with them, or we can sponsor a session with them. And I think like that's super important, because a lot of the times you're going to be in spaces where like you're going to sit in that session and you might not understand like everything that's being thrown at you. You might need to sit down and process these things. So it's like you get to follow up with these experts, but then also you have an ecosystem of mentors that we pair you with as well too. And those are paired on a basis of like whatever you would need for your startup. So some folks might pick like an industry focus. They want somebody that's super well like versed in their industry, where versus like we have some folks that are just like, I just need a generalist. I need somebody that knows a little bit of everything. And it's like, so you not only have the program curriculum, you not only have the recorded sessions and like the PowerPoint that goes with it, and then that expert that can meet with you for office hours, you also have your mentors. And then if that doesn't work either, it's like a thing of like, we always tell folks, we have a weekly survey that we give out. And in that survey, it's like essentially a way to, one, just capture like how much knowledge you've been able to gain like in these sessions and assess like how the sessions are going. But you should also have an open avenue, an open channel to be like, hey, like, Kat, I need this resource and I haven't seen it anywhere on the program curriculum for the next 6 months. Is there any way you can connect me to somebody with like PR and branding? Is there any way like I can speak to a lawyer? Like I know this session is in March, but can I speak to them now? I have like something that I need to get to in this moment. And the life of an entrepreneur is super, I think it's so random. I think it's like a thing. It's so beautiful that it is so random, but it's like, you never know what you're going to have to prepare for. So I think we design it to encompass all of those things and really make sure that it's like, not only are we educating you, but we're giving you tools to exercise that education to then grow into that autonomy of self, right? And establish a great foundation as an entrepreneur.
I love that. I love that you are addressing the autonomy issue, right? Because to your point, every entrepreneur is different. Every founder's challenges are going to be different. And the fact that you guys show enough flexibility to be able to move resources or move founders to resources when they need them, especially if at times, as you're right, nothing ever in a founder's life happens on schedule, right? Like you talk to any founder, ask them anything about anything, and the one thing they will tell you is nothing ever happens on schedule or never is delivered by the promised time or the deadline. And so they're always having to adjust and shift. And a program that's willing to do that with them is just over the top phenomenal. And so talk a little bit about what misconceptions founders might have about working with accelerators in co-working spaces or in innovation centers like CIC? Because I know you guys also, you see a lot of the positive, but you also hear and see kind of what some of the founders' misperceptions and fears are when they come into environments like this.
I would say, so I don't think this is a misconception, because I think that they've had these experiences where previous accelerators or programs that they've gone through have really pushed them towards VC. And so something that we wanted to do really intentionally in our program is give, as Sam was saying, like give them education, help them understand what VC might mean, but then also help them understand what other options are out there for them, because that's not the right path for a lot of founders. And it sort of feels like when you're in the startup ecosystem, that is like the goal that everyone is striving for, but there are a lot of other types of funding out there. So something that we've done in iterations of this program is really focus on what does VC actually mean? What are you gaining? What are you losing by going down that path? What are other paths that are available? And so I think it's not a misconception, because it's an experience that a lot of them have had, but it's something that we want to be really intentional about, creating other pathways for them. And then I think, like, I don't know, I would imagine that coming into a space like CIC could be intimidating. Just a lot of people working on tech and, biotech, and it might sort of seem, we're literally physically in a building that might seem sort of, I don't know, intimidating in some ways. And so actually getting in here and getting to meet the people and see how willing people are to talk or sit down for a few minutes over coffee and share their expertise, I think is probably something that a lot of them didn't really understand until they were here in the space experiencing it.
No, I've heard that firsthand. One of my mentees and current program members, Nazir, who for the listeners, you'll be able to see his interview later this month. But he is a phenomenal example of a kid who moved to Boston from the Kansas City area to specifically take advantage of everything that is the CIC environment and ecosystem. And his first week, the kid must have talked my ear off for like an hour about how many different people he met walking around in the hallways, about how he was inspired by how many different, people and founders that he was exposed to in the first week at the CIC. And this is a kid who on faith relocated to the Boston area to make sure that he was in a position to take as much advantage of as much of and many of the resources that the CIC offers as possible. And so I really love that. And Nazir is probably a great example. I want you to kind of talk about a little bit as well, which is he's not from the Boston area, didn't apply when he lived in the Boston area. And people who are listening to this may, kind of turn off and say, well, it's not in my city, so why do I need to be kind of focused on this, or is this really relevant to me? Talk a little bit about your locations, your programs, and how they are available to and have been engaged with by people other than people who just live in the campus cities.
Do you want to go, Sam?
Yeah, I can go. Yeah, I think what's been beautiful about this process is not only getting people, of course, like to come to an innovation hub like Boston and Cambridge. I think it's like creating pathways for those bridges to be built, right? In a sense of like a lot of the resources that we compile, our goal is not only to have them be accessible to folks that are in Boston, but like also, hey, St. Louis, like we have this person that does like online webinars, like let's get y'all on so we can like invite your cohort. Hey, Philly, same thing happening over here. Like, so we really strive to like make these resources available across all campuses and make sure that they're accessible, whether it's like a Zoom call or like something that they can tune into afterwards. I think that that's like super important just because like there are going to be a lot of entrepreneurs. And I think as somebody that's not from here too, like I really love when they tell me like, yeah, like I moved to Boston to do this thing. I'm like, as you should move away from your hometown and do that. Because it is super daunting and it is very scary. But I think with us, like we really pride ourselves on like being able to kind of bridge those gaps for them, right? So a person like Nazir, it's beautiful to see him kind of like take risk and like he's always at CIC. Like there is not a day I do not see Nazir here. He's here probably more than me. And I work here. And the same thing with like some of our founders from our past cohort too. We had a founder from Detroit, Michigan, Crystal Brown. She is an amazing powerhouse of a woman. And now she's doing things to kind of like build bridges between Detroit and Boston. Like she's trying to create partnerships all because she started in a place like here where she was able to be given that platform, you know, to like expand. She even moved all the way to Boston. She had operating things in Boston already, but she was like, I'm gonna just make the move. Like I'm gonna just come over. And she's still doing things in Detroit and also really running things out here in Cambridge and Boston. And that's just like one of the many examples of folks that like maybe they're not doing things in Boston. We have another founder who's doing stuff in the Berkshires and like she's expanding her work to that part of Western Mass. And like to a lot of people, they're just like, oh, but it's still Mass. But it's like, no, Massachusetts is actually pretty big.
Really big.
And that impact goes such a long way in places like that that don't commonly get exposure to innovation practices like in Boston and in Cambridge. Doing things like that is super it's just an amazing thing to see. And I think that it's so important for us to like keep building bridges and like connecting the pieces to different cities, right? Because Boston might not be the end all be all for a person like Nazir. He might one day say, I want to go to New York. What can y'all do for me? And it's like, okay, now we've kind of built partnerships and collaborations and we've met different people that we can connect you to, you know, that can help you in that transition. So I think it's just from the outside looking in, it's been amazing to see like us being able to build those things actively and contribute to like a sustainable ecosystem.
And I love what you said, Sam, about go ahead and move, right? Come to Boston. And because I think, right, I'm a big believer in the fact that in many ways in this country, we have done a disservice to certain professions by not assigning the same sort of autonomy, as you said earlier, right? So think about any kid in America right now who wants to be in Hollywood or wants to be in the movies. What do we say to them? I don't care where you are, Omaha, Nebraska, Indiana, Boston, you need to move to LA. You need to go out to California to be a great actor, right? Like we tell for certain professions, it's assumed. You got to leave
And if
where
I
you
can
are and
add,
go get the right education, right? But then for some reason with entrepreneurship, we have this very kind of blocked in, stodgy, kind of old school attitude of you stay in your own market or community. And if you don't have resources, well, I guess you can't be an entrepreneur. What? Right? Like, so I love that you brought that up. And Nazir is, to me, a perfect example of that, as somebody who's saying, I'm not going to just wait and sit in Kansas City and hope that maybe something is, eventually put in place for me to take advantage of in my hometown. I'm going to go find it, right? And educational opportunities in the form of entrepreneurial support is something that I think CIC is leading the way on, hopefully inspiring more people to realize that entrepreneurship is also a profession that may require you to actually relocate from your town or your city. So I love that.
I just wanted to add really quickly, I think too, like being able to give them the tools to then be able to go back to their hometown and build the economy that's deserved to be there is also important as well. Because I think of like, move from your hometown, but also set up a foundation so like firm and strong that you can always go back and start building those same things that folks are pushing forward for you in those other cities, right? Like I think about that all the time. And I think about people like Crystal, like people like Nazir, and like founders that we've had come through our program that do those things, because it's not just about coming to Boston and building. It's like about going back to Kansas City and building, going back to Detroit and building, because these types of things are also needed there, right? Cat and Sam can't be everywhere. So like
that's exactly right. And to your point, Sam, let me think about it. That has been kind of the reality in some businesses, is that you are not in the right market. You don't have the right market fit for your particular concept. And so you may have to go somewhere else with better market fit that's not home. And I'll give a perfect quick example. If anybody knows of the origin story of Dave and Buster's, Dave and Buster's started off as two bar owners in Little Rock, Arkansas, who had adjoining spots and were like, yo, we should put these two concepts together and we probably got something dope. Unfortunately, though, and they knew Little Rock, Arkansas was not going to be the city to scale a Dave and Buster's. So what they do? They went to Dallas, 5.5 hours down the road. They start their first big Dave and Buster's there. Rest is history, right? Now, even today, this is not a lie. There's no Dave and Buster's in Little Rock, Arkansas, right? Like, because it can't support it. Now, I'm sure they have some other business entity or operation where they put money back into the local Arkansas economy, but ultimately that concept was not going to work in little bitty Little Rock, Arkansas. And many founders that I think, to your point, you are incubating right now, realize that they need to be in places where there's more scale, more resources, an ecosystem like Boston, where in smaller towns and cities across the country, places that I've been in and grown up in, you might have one of those potential resources. And if that is not a great fit for you, and I know a lot of people listening to me reach out to me all the time and say, hey, I live in Greenville, South Carolina, and they have all these incubators for fintech, but I actually have a consumer products startup and I can't find a accelerator in my town that's not tech focused. And that probably is a reality for a vast majority of people across the country, is your city probably has one or two specialties, one of those likely being a tech-based focus, likely in the fintech or health tech space, two most popular areas right now. And if you're not in those spaces, you may feel left out as a founder. So talk a little bit about, just shifting gears, how can the ecosystem supporters, people like me, consultants, investors, community leaders, how can they plug in and support the CIC?
I mean, I think, so one of the things that we're sort of trying to do is create, I guess, is another version of an ecosystem, but sort of a roadmap for people so that they're not just like dipping in, taking our program, and then they're out of the community. We want to be sort of cultivating an ecosystem that will support founders in the full length of their journey, whatever that means for them. And I think that there can be sort of a competitive mindset of like, oh, well, we don't want to support them because that's another program. And like, we're a program too. And so we're competing against each other. But I think, I don't know, I like the expression of rising tide floats all ships. Like we're really all in this together, and we are trying to support entrepreneurs at different stages of their growth and development. And I think, I don't know, one of the benefits of COVID was that it made us a more global society. It's easier to collaborate with people who aren't located next to us. And so, Dana, we've never met in person, but you're
Yep.
mentoring several of our startups, and we've had some great conversations. And that is just from some being introduced by the founders of Coil
Yep.
Deluxe. And so I think that just being willing to kind of, I don't know, use your network, shoot people who have really common goals and message on LinkedIn and just say like, hey, we're doing something different. We might not be in the same place, but I have something that I think I could offer you. Maybe you have expertise that I'm looking for, and just being kind of willing to make those connections with people. It's worked really well for us. And now, yeah, we have collaborators in cities across the US, which has been really fun to develop.
And I would be remiss without also letting you appeal directly to those in the community who represent investors and funding sources, and the need for more of those as part of the CIC.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're definitely trying to develop relationships with different types of funders as well. And again, that VCs, like, please get in touch. We would love to
Yeah.
chat with you. But then also, I think like I said, we want to make sure that we're presenting our cohort with a number of different financial resources, from banks and lines of credit to revenue-based financing to angels to grants to pitch competitions. So we're trying to make sure that we're developing relationships with funders to be able to make their portfolios more inclusive and representative of the rich ecosystem that we have. And then we also want to make sure that for our founders, they're getting a choice in what types of relationships they're developing with funders and who they're taking funds from.
Yeah, because it's such a complicated process, and I know of the many things you support founders in, funding is probably one of the most talked about and one of the most requested areas of support. Most of the founders that I work with in the CIC have some form of funding need that they are currently working on. And I love the fact, Kat, that you said you guys are trying to change the narrative around funding and what kind of funding it typically takes to scale a startup, because so many founders have been misled, or just really the noise in the media around these 10 million, 15, 20 million dollar raises with the VC, and all of a sudden you've got a unicorn and you're just off to the races, and that's probably less than 1% of all of the businesses that are founded on an annual basis in this country, right? So there are so many other traditional ways to get to the funding, including, as I love that you brought up, which nobody seems to want to go the route of anymore, which is finance. There is loan based funding out there available for startup founders, and especially with a lot of the changing climate around funding at a national and a government level, I would strongly encourage our listeners and our founders to check out that angle from a funding standpoint as well, because VC funding is not going to carry most of your businesses to the promised land. It is really out there for a chosen few who have the right concept and the right ability to connect with the right VCs to actually secure those investments. So love that. Now, before we wrap up, tell me a little bit about what's coming up next for you at the CIC Boston. Any exciting events, any pilot programs or community partnerships that we should know about?
Yeah. So we actually have our annual demo day. Well, it's not annual. So we have a demo day that happens for every single cohort. So I guess you
Yep.
could say it's semi-annual because we
Yep.
run 2 cohorts. But the demo day is super important just because it's giving a platform for the founders to just be able to pitch and also just celebrate their accomplishment. Like, you're a part of a cohort, you've been working so hard for 6 months, and we built the curriculum with this sense of like the first couple of weeks are like we're really just practicing all these things, we're listening, we're kind of like observing that like midpoint, and that's where we are right now. It's really like putting those things into practice, but we still kind of got like we're still
Yep.
in this space with you. And then those last couple of weeks are like really like push yourself to kind of like practice those things, and we kind of like loosen the reins just a little bit, so that way like
Mhm.
it's a space that it can be explored, and like really you're able to get feedback still from us, you're able to still like provide those resources for you. And I think the demo day is a beautiful way to kind of like just sync all those things together to just say like congratulations, you did it. And also we do it in partnership with Venture Cafe. So we kind of take over the entire Thursday gathering of the night, and it's a super cool night. We host like a panel conversation. And every single like cohort, it looks differently. But for the growth stage cohort, we take over the entire night. We have a panel conversation, and then we do the rapid pitches for the startups that have like graduated the program essentially. And it's really, really fun. Like I think that it was beautiful witnessing it last year and seeing just like all the momentum that we were able to build. And then it was just like boom, like we got this demo day down, like all of our founders are here, there's different folks in the room, there's different investors in the room, there's different ecosystem partners in the room, mentors and people that have collaborated with us on the programming to speak to those things. I think it's just a beautiful way to kind of like really show them like this is your community now, and like these are the folks that kind of showed up for you, and keep moving in that sense, because you're only going to build this from here. Like it's only going to get bigger from here. So that's like one of the biggest things we have coming up. And then we are opening up our applications for our early stage cohort that's happening from September to December. So those applications open in mid-May, I believe May 23rd to be exact.
Okay.
And you can
And we'll
find
make
those
sure we
all.
post links on our website, everybody,
Yeah,
so you can
you
make
can
sure if
find
you're
those on our
interested in
landing
applying.
page.
Yep.
Yeah, on our
And
landing
that's an early
page.
stage cohort this fall, right?
Yes. So that one is a 3-month program. So it's very similar to the 6-month program that we run. And I just realized we didn't really break those things down,
Yeah.
but we run
Let's
3
talk a
to
little
6
bit
month
of, yeah.
programming.
Mhm.
So both of the programs, we have a program curriculum, which we kind of bust out within those 3 or 6 months. And we do that. We have bi-weekly sessions to like weekly sessions. Sometimes it kind of switches up depending
Yep.
on what's going on in the month. But essentially all of those are in a hybrid format for the most part, with some in-person requirements. And those in-person requirements are literally like networking kind of events that we curate for you. So like a resource fair with Startup Boston, or we have something called an investor reverse pitch, where we actually have the investors come and pitch to our startups. So it's kind of
Whoa.
like switching the roles up.
Yeah, very cool. I'd love to attend one of
Yes.
those.
Yeah, it's and all of them are very like they're curated for the exact group that we're working with in that moment. So
Nice.
you'll kind of get the same gist along all the cohorts, but it's very much like if we have to bring in a different speaker to kind of speak to those startups needs, we do. It's industry agnostic, so we take any kind of startup from any industry.
Mhm.
Um and again, it's for BIPOC, female and or veteran founders. The biggest differences between the 3 and 6-month program is with the 3-month program, because it's early stage, it's like a lot more like jam packed in a sense of like you're doing things back to back to back to back. And it's for anybody that's like literally within their ideation.
Yep.
So like right before
Pre-revenue.
they pre-launch. Yeah, like
Mhm.
pre-revenue. And then our growth stage is like you're on the market, you're kind of growing, you're looking to scale, maybe you're looking to pivot, you're in those stages of like, all right, I'm like starting to fundraise, I've already fundraised around, I don't really know what to do.
Right, trying to figure it out.
Exactly, trying to figure it out. So yeah, those are like our 2 main things that we kind of run over here. But our early stage program is coming up in September, and I think we'd love to kind of see folks show up for that. So yeah.
I love that. And real quick, I wanted you to just explain a little bit more about Venture Cafe, because I think that is again just a perfect example of this ecosystem and how you guys like leverage the ecosystem in a way that I think if I lived in Boston, and I'm obviously kind of is suggesting for those of you who are listening and do live in Boston, y'all need to get out and really check out these resources because it's crazy. So talk a little bit about Venture Cafe and kind of the setting that this whole demo day environment will be in.
Yeah, so Venture Cafe is our sister organization, founded in, I believe, 2009, the mid 2000s. And so it's a weekly event that happens out of our spaces on Thursday afternoons. There are venture cafes also all over the US and internationally, but
Mhm.
it's a gathering of different innovators, entrepreneurs, ecosystem partners to come together and meet and learn and connect and inspire. And so throughout the night, there's ongoing networking, and then they'll also have devoted panels and sessions to different topics. Sometimes it's super industry focused. So for example, we have like a Basque culinary night where we have startups from the Basque region come and share their
Wow.
startups. Or it'll be something really broad. Like the
Yeah.
other week, we had a session on marketing and why you should never have a how it works page on your website.
Yeah.
So there's really something there for everyone. It usually ends up being about half first time visitors and half folks that just come every week or come regularly. And out of our Cambridge site, we usually get between 350 and 600 attendees every single week. So it's the largest weekly gathering in the city. And I would imagine that a lot of our other cities can boast that same claim. But it's a really great way, if you're in the innovation ecosystem, to meet people and kind of get a finger on the pulse of what the current trends are that are happening in the space right now. Yeah, so if you're in the Boston area, please stop by Thursday afternoons. It's free to attend. It's open to the public. And it's a really great event.
And is the event for the graduating cohort class, is that also free to the public?
Also free, yeah. And you'll be able to vote on your favorite pitch. So you being there will actually directly put money in someone's pocket. So the winner of the audience pitch will get $1,000. There's it raises the stakes a little bit for everybody.
It does raise the stakes. And I would be remiss if I didn't also add a shameless plug. I will be actually moderating the panel session for that day. So for those listening, that's the added bonus. If you're in the Boston area, definitely come out. I just would encourage you to come out, period, for these venture cafes. Because again, as Kat said, the resource networking, the size of this group relative to some of the networks that I have been in other big cities. I can tell you right now here in Charlotte, there's a similar event. They might get 50 people on any given night. So, do the math, right? 50 versus 400. And we're not talking about cities that are dramatically different than each other in terms of size of the entrepreneurial market. So really, really a great event. Really appreciate you sharing that. So before we wrap up, I want to make sure we share all of the, necessary social media pages and places in the ecosystem that our listeners can go and find out more about the CIC. So if you don't mind sharing that information, that would be great.
Yeah, you can find us at CIC.com. And then our specific landing page is CIC.com/SIP-MA, the Social Impact Program, Massachusetts.
Perfect. And we will have all of those links as well as links to both Sam and Kat. So if you want to reach out and learn more about the CIC or how you can either support or become a potential cohort member in one of the upcoming programs, definitely check out that information. And Sam and Kat, thanks again for taking time to share your stories and the incredible work you're doing at the CIC Boston. Look, your leadership is really making a difference for founders across industries and backgrounds. I know that personally because I think there are 5 or 6 founders who rave about both of you and the time that they've had in the CIC. So shout out to all the founders I work with, including Quills Deluxe and Nazir and the guys over at Solicit, and Jeremy and the guys at Tactus, and even the founders that I haven't had a chance to work with formally, but have had a chance to interview, including Sheila Facile, and we've got an upcoming interview up with a couple of other founders on the list as well. So really, really excited about the work we're doing with the CIC, but I just want to make sure I commend both of you for making a difference with these founders as well. I know they appreciate it, and I want to say it on their behalf as well.
Thank you, Dana. And thank you also for supporting our cohort. It's been really wonderful to kind of see those relationships develop, and we love our cohorts. So
we do love our cohorts. Yeah. We love all of these members. Listen, for our leaders and readers, listeners and readers, this is just the beginning. Throughout the month of April and May, we're going to be featuring CIC-based founders and startups doing powerful work, including some of the founders I just mentioned. Quills Deluxe, changing the face of medical hair loss care. Tactus, which is revolutionizing accessibility through wearable tech. We've got Solicit, who are reshaping fashion resale through AI. You've got the Compass Project, using trauma-informed frameworks to uplift youth, and even OVs. We will talk to Deanna, who will be taking us through her journey, tackling maternal health equity with innovation and empathy. So a lot of great interviews coming up, and that literally is just the tip of the iceberg in terms of the types of founders and the diverse businesses that the CIC Boston campus supports, as well as the St. Louis and Philadelphia campuses as well. So we want to make sure that you follow along and continue to watch these founder spotlights and interviews and learn for more ways to get involved. Until next time, I really appreciate you following the show. This is Dana Ammon signing out again with Sam Garcia and Kat Lazell, 2 great individuals leading the charge at CIC Boston. Make sure you check them out and check us out as well. Have a great one.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the Brand Blueprint journey. Make sure to follow us on all of our social media platforms to stay updated. Watch the full episodes on our YouTube channel for an in-depth experience. Don't forget to subscribe to our website at thebrandblueprint.biz for exclusive content and materials. We're everywhere you need us to be.